You know, a wise old man once never told me, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, also go alone. Yeah, just overall, it's probably better to go alone. Well, unless you want, like, a life. But who wants one of those? My eyes dart around the room before I begin to slowly raise my hand. The old man throws a book at my head. Yeah, this is kind of my inner conflict. The older, I don't know if I can say wiser, but definitely heartless part of me is like, what do you need friends for? You got 12 perfectly good philosophy books to read in a limited time to find all the answers to the universe. And here you are spending that precious time on friendships. And I mean, he's not wrong. But the other, almost caring part of me, keyword almost, is like, but everything's not just about me. The other people matter too. The old man squints. Are you sure? Yes! What are you, a heartless, soulless, selfish brain? The old man ponders for a moment. Yeah, basically. I rub my hand down my face. So yeah, I've been in the habit of ignoring the old man as of late. But I will be honest, finding all the answers to the universe does sound quite appealing. Nope, friends are worth it. I'm not going to become a heartless hobbit that just writes extremely intellectual papers in my mom's basement. Probably. Okay, I'm mostly kidding, but I have spent a ton of time hanging out with people as of late, and part of me wishes I spent that time, becoming a true genius. But I think, all in all, I've made the better decision. Let's be honest, friends are pretty great, but just remember that if a time comes when you ask me something like, Alex, why can't it essentially order an infinite regress occur? And you get back something like, because that would create an actual infinite, and no one likes actual infinites. Don't ask me why. It's your fault! The reason why I don't know why no one likes actual infinites is because I've been too busy having a life. Anyway, I blame all of you. I do mean to find that out sooner or later. Do people only dislike actual infinites? Or if they're physical? And if not, then is God an actual infinite? This could be problematic. Anyway, I have sufficiently rambled to start off what promises to be a pretty long email. But for all my hating on friendship, I must say, I'm really glad to count all of you as friends. Most of the time, you're all pretty great. Now on to life. Eyes go wide, he looks in the distance and thinks about things that happened over the last 5 weeks. Holy cow, this is going to take a while. Let's see. After the last email I sent you guys, my family had the Myers over for dinner, which was interesting. I say that because the Myers have like 10,000 children. Slight exaggeration. I think they actually have 11. And so our tiny house was not very accommodating. We had some satisfactory conversations, some of which were insane enough to actually like history. So I tried to talk them off the ledge, but it seems like they're beyond rescue. And we also played some groundies, which was fun. And yeah, it was a satisfactory time. I then had to go to D&D, so I donned on my blades and booked it to Newhouse, only to find out D&D had been canceled. And I could have just known that by looking at the text that was clearly displayed across my phone. So yeah, that was stupid of me. I then proceeded to blade all the way back and do something I can't remember at home while I waited for the Neo group. I then bladed Neo group and had a good discussion where we had no clue. Oh, and I had no clue which one it was, which is the problem with regular Bible studies. They all tend to blur together in my mind, Anyway, I stayed afterward and played video games with Neo until 12:30 or so. Probably not the best choice, but, it was fun. The next day, I did school. The same old, same old. I played basketball in the gym. Problem is, I suck at basketball, so does Matt. I tried to talk to the Aces kid about God, but he said he didn't want to talk about it. I'm assuming he's scared to lose. And then I did work and hand sanded metal until my arms wanted to murder me. Oh, and then I went to Cane's, which is the best restaurant on the planet for all you Kiwi folk, and talked with Joe about philosophy and stuff. We touched on politics for a bit, but most of the time consisted of me just staring blankly and being interesting in as many different ways as possible. Okay, it wasn't that bad, but I just know nothing about politics, so I was kind of 100% ignored on the topic at hand. Anyway, it was a really good conversation. More school the next day. I met this math nerd, coincidentally also named Alex. He might be a reincarnation of me. And we talked about what constitutes a dimension in math. I don't think we really got to a sound answer, and I don't know so much about math, so it was hard to keep up at that level. But it was good, and I like it. Oh, and it was pretty fun, because Cherry sat on the conversation for the last 5 minutes, and I asked her what she thought afterward, and she was like, yeah, I have no idea what you guys were saying. Which, that's your fault for jumping in the last 5 minutes. Also, I tried to argue to God for... I tried to argue with Alex for God's existence, and we haven't really talked since then. So that's unfortunate. Besides that, I worked out with Caleb that day. It wasn't pleasant. Our workouts never are. But then again, it's the definition of a good workout. Oh, and then I got my grade back from my psychology test, and I was the only one in the class who scraped by with an A. I know, I'm very humble about it. We did this whole grade boosting thing, though, where we went through the test, and if everyone got the same problem wrong, she just had us all counted as right. I don't understand how that's a logical thing to do. Don't ask me. But I'm not going to turn down a free 12% boost to my grade. So at the end of it all, I had 102%. So that's cool. Probably the first 100% I've gotten on a midterm. Later that day, I went to Ratchet Christie, and here's what CSU looked like. There's a picture. We had a debate about, what was it? I think we talked about a rebuttal I heard against a Kalam cosmological argument, namely that it committed an equivocation fallacy when he used the word existence. We agree the rebuttal is sound, but even, with the problem of equivocation, it's still something the premises holds. But now I'm not so sure, because with proof used for the universe being infinite or being finite may need to be considered again. Anyway, we also learned the moral argument, which I think is a quite poor standard for an argument, as personally atheists can just be like, I deny premise too. And it's morally just to have morality is just a social construct, and there's no definitive proof other than intuition why that can't be the case. But it does become useful in conjunction with other arguments, so I'm not going to throw it all together. Here's a trick and scratch produced for that day. There's a whiteboard. The next day, lo and behold, more school. Ben finished reading my short story Qualian, and that was kind of eventful. Let's overlook the fact that I forced him to read my short stories as a payment for me driving him off campus. I'm a very kind brother. I had more work, and it was Grace's birthday. I'm also 70% sure she's 13 at this point. Is it bad that I'm not certain of my sister's age? Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. I also committed at this point to not shave for the month of November, which at the time seemed like a big commitment, but now that, I'm in that month, it's been made clear to me how minimalistic my facial hair truth is. But anyway, I got into a deep conversation. I got a deep conversation out of the deal, so it was worth it. I also talked to a certain ENTJ that night, which was good. The next day was more school and working out. The problem is Caleb is out beasting me and just about everything, so that's great. I played soccer in the gym that day, and it was fun. The teacher said I had good work ethic, and he wanted me to try and join his class. Apparently, he knew I had a good work ethic because I played hard in the gym. And I'm kind of like, thanks? Because that's true. This teacher literally only sees me like maybe once a week in the gym. For all he knows, I could be a total slacker when it comes to school. Also, I've never had a teacher ask me to join their class before. It's kind of weird overall. Anyway, later that day, I took Grace out to the Dollar Tree where I gave her $13 to spend, because, she's 13, and she had the option to spend one of those dollars on buying me candy. And if she guessed the candy I wanted, she got an extra $10 to spend. See, I thought it was pretty creative, I do say so myself. The problem is she took literally 10 minutes deciding which candy to choose, and by the time she'd actually chosen, her guess was wrong. But the good news is, I learned a lesson from that experience. Never take girls shopping. Like, I could have got that done in far less than 5 minutes, but it was over an hour. Shakes his head. Just another thing I'll never understand about the female species. And yes, I do classify them as a separate species for reasons like this. Once we were finally at that store, I drove her home and hung out with Nita for a while, and it was fun. The next day was typical, had school and stuff. I got certified for woodworking, so that was cool. CC has this massive woodworking shop with tons of really cool tools, and I want to build something, but life's been crazy, so I haven't really gotten around to it. And there's some pictures that Ben took on the way to school. The next day, I helped Dad pick up a bunch of tomatoes, and then I helped Mom clean the gutters, and then after that, I drove some of Myers kids over to hang, and they played with Lego in my car. Ha! Take that, person who thought that putting bins of Lego in the backseat was a useless idea. After that, I took them home, and the family went to the park. Oh, and we went to the park over by the house, and we tossed the Frisbee around. It was great until Grace's dog Gizmo jumped on a small bystanding child, and then me and Ben butted heads going for the Frisbee. Oh yeah, so it kind of ended in a disaster. But I got to talk to my ISFJ friend from New Zealand, whose name I will not disclose. The next day, I worked on my paper debunking sensationalism. Yep, you heard me. Reform Christians. I'm a continualist, and for good reason. The only problem is now that I intellectually grant that gifts exist, at least in some form, I still have like 0% faith they do. So that's slightly problematic. If any of you pray for me in that regard, that'd be great. I then played D&D, did Neo Group, and played Mario Smash Bros. Against Neo. I did very little smashing, and tend to get more smashed. The next day, I went to school and played soccer and finished the aforementioned sensationalism paper. It's like 10 pages, so not that long, and if any of you want to just read it, ask. I did more school, had a doctor's appointment, and it turns out my parents may or may not be anti-vaxxers, and I may or may not need some vaccinations. Yeah, Dad is quite passionate about me not getting vaccinated, so we had a very long talk on the subject. That was fun. I also went to Ratio late that night, and if I recall, it was a Q&A night, but it was mostly just a Q night with some questionable A's. I challenged the optimistic notion of will fixing and still being free, and I may or may not have hijacked the whole thing. But I did manage to be silent for most of the second half, so I did pretty good. Here's the indecipherable code from that session. By the way, I've been really enjoying Ratio Christi. It's like an outlet for all the debating pent up in me. And Alan is the one giving me a run for my money at the moment. Sometimes the leader Noah does it, but mostly Alan. Anyway, that day was good. The next day I did more school and work, and I came upon an ingenious idea to celebrate the Myers family birthdays. You see, there's like 13 of them, so right off the bat, there's no way I can give them all presents. Like, if I gave a socially acceptable amount of $20 to each of them each year, that would be $260 a year. But what I decided to do is on their birthday, I would let them roll a 20-sided dice. And if they got their age, or the equivalent of their age, I would give them $100. Now, at first, that seems like a crazy good deal for them, not me. But I ran the odds. There's only a 65% chance that I pay any of them $100 every year. Pretty great, right? I can simultaneously seem generous and not be generous at the same time. I'm so smart. Thanks for what would happen if they defy the odds. There's no way this plan could go wrong. However, I did cap the amount at $300 a year, just in case. All that said, the point is, I'm a stingy genius. I then proceeded to go to youth group and debate with Joe on the way home. I got to describe dualism and hylomorphism, two of the major views on the human person, to Grace, which of course I use little words. And then I got to teach Ben about why I don't think salvation is irrevocable from a human point of view. I wrote a paper, about this just in case you want to challenge that notion. Also about Catholic dogma. You see, I've listened to like 100 hours of this Catholic podcast called Pints Aquinas, where this Catholic guy unpacks what Thomism said about stuff, and particularly the Summa Theologia. And I've learned a lot of cool philosophy stuff. And I've also learned a lot about Catholic theology. Now, I don't think it's that unreasonable. I mean, some of the stuff about the Virgin Mary seems crazy, but other than that, Catholicism is a lot more biblical than I thought. Anyway, that was just a great day. The next day it snowed for the first time. Yay! And I was pretty excited because the one thing I really do love is snow. The only problem is, being a Kiwi for the last 3 years, I had no idea how to drive in snow. So me driving to school was definitely a sketchy experience. I just picture that. Pretty drastic change from the sunny, warm land only a few days earlier. After that, I had a not so successful debate with one of my atheists at my table. I was trying to explain why I think holding hard determinism and multiverse are incompatible, but they were like, yeah, we don't just know what's beyond our universe, so your argument doesn't work. Which is actually kind of fair enough. I mean, I think that you have to give up on any form of hard determinism, but they didn't seem to want to do that. Later that day, I finally sent a package off to the rogue cone friend of mine, who has a tendency to periodically drop off the face of the planet, so I have no idea if he got it. I also bought a massive tarp for my car and some oil. I don't know why I'm including that. And yeah, I think that's too boring. Anyway, I proceeded to go to a young adults group, which was pretty good. The thing is, I decided to not go constantly because that would chalk my church stuff up to 5 things a week, which is crazy. The next day was uneventful, just school and homework. The next day I got to sleep in, which was nice, and I spent the rest of my day working on my history paper of death. In the process, I decided to be generous and support my sister's fundraising for a trip to DC. They were doing a car wash, and I paid like $10 for the most questionable car wash I've ever seen. I then ran around, grabbed library books. Is it bad that I had asked to help figure out which books I put a hold on and check them out? And then later that day, I hung out with Joseph. Our conversation was like 1% about God, which was very disappointing, and it wasn't very enjoyable, to be honest. However, we did get really close to some deer, so I'll show you some pictures of those deer, because the deer must have had brain damage, because let's get way too close. Yep, there's a deer. Any chance you can guess what this place is? Well, if you saw the picture, maybe. But, yep, once again, Horsetooth. I really need to find some other place to hike. Anyway, the whole experience was quite draining, but I did get to learn some philosophy stuff once I got home, so that was good. The next day was insanely busy. I literally woke up, went to church in Southgate, gave Johanna the aforementioned birthday present. She didn't get her age. Had some really good conversations about after church, and then had to cut it short to rush over to my friends the Bassett's house. A little background on these guys. When I was 12, we lived next door to each other because we were house sitting for some people, and we got to know them really well. We would play every other day. And then when we came back from Kentucky, we lived in their basement for a month and a half. That was also great. We did so many Nerf wars. Anyway, the point is they're a great family, and we know them for a long time, and they call us up to have dinner at their house. So I rushed over there, and when I got there, it was so weird. Literally nothing had changed. The furniture was exactly the same spots. Their dog was still kind of ugly. They were the exact same people I left 2 years ago, except taller. So, really weird. Anyway, our families reconnected. It was ridiculously easy because they were just the same people. At least I remember them being. And yeah, it was good. I had to leave early to make D&D, and it turns out Brayden, their oldest, who's 19, loves D&D, and so I invited him to join the campaign. My dungeon master, Neo, said that he could have him do a trial run, but he couldn't join that session, that was cool. So I drove directly from the Bassett's house to D&D and had a great time. I stayed for Bible study, and a new girl came. We talked about the gifts of the Spirit for half the time, which was, to be honest, way more interesting than the Bible study itself. And then we hung out with Neo until that night and slept. Seriously, that was a crazy but good day. I had school again. I talked with a kid sitting by himself who I haven't talked to before, and he seemed to endure me rather than wanting to talk. I then forced Ben to read some of my short stories as tribute for use of my car and times. That was great. I think he's read them all at this point. Perhaps I should say he's endured them all at this point. And then I hung out with a guy named Jake from my youth group for a few hours, and that was such a good conversation. We kind of shared life stories, and I convinced him of some things. I love being right. And it was just a really good time. I also talked with a friend from New Zealand that night. The next day was school, which was okay. And then I worked out, which was not so okay. The only thing Caleb did not beat me at was... Oh, not only did Caleb out-pull-up me, we both strapped a weight around us and tried to do pull-ups, and I couldn't, and he could. But he also beat me in an arm wrestle. Twice. Yeah, let's not dwell on that. I saw some kids kicking their phone around the halls, like a hockey puck, like you do. And then I drove home because Dad couldn't pick Ben up, so I took him with me. I then went to Radisson Christie and had a really interesting conversation about quantum physics. A guy majoring in theoretical physics, I think, taught me, and now I 10% know what I'm talking about. The other thing that happened was Noah, the leader, tried to get out of the ontological problem of evil by denying God's moral necessity, quite quite adamantly objected that he didn't care about possibility. But I argued with him, and nothing has changed. You see, you thought I was going to say I convinced him, but no, it turns out we're both really stubborn. But next week, I had constructive formal arguments and wrote them on the board, and he still disagreed. I think you've caught on by now. However, even though he wasn't convinced by my arguments, which were great arguments, by the way, he was convinced when Alan told him I was right. You see how frustrating that is? But the point is, I was right. I then went to school once more, but I had an extra 2 days added to my weekend, so that was sweet. I took a history test, which I did pretty well. I had work, I went to youth group, and a person from New Zealand stayed at our house, which is pretty cool. A bit awkward, though, because I didn't know him too well, but cool nonetheless. The next day, I took Ben, my bro, and Benj Myers to play laser tag, 11 laser tag. We played for like a solid 5 hours, well, with mandatory breaks in between sessions, and that was pretty great. Other than when the guy who ran the game played, I think I won every round. Pump's fist. Still awesome. Plus, Ben had a free pizza coupon, so we got a free pizza split at the end. It was a pretty good time. After that, I dropped Ben off with Grace and went out. Dropped Ben off, and then Grace and I went out rollerblading. And then I talked to the one and only ENTJ I know. Well, it's not true anymore. I have met one more ENTJ, and that was all good. The guy who was staying with us left the next day, and I proceeded to get sick. Yay. We all know that's 0% due to the fact that I spent the previous day at laser tag for 5 hours consuming copious amounts of pizza and soda. I only make life choices that are very good. So yeah, being sick was lame, but before I felt that bad, I met with Braden and Neo for a Let's See If You're Worthy session, aka Neo wanted to see if Braden would work well with our D&D campaign. It was during this session I discovered that Braden was an atheist. Blinks twice. Kind of awkward when your childhood friend who used to be a Christian turns out to be an atheist. And I resolved to bring him to the light. Thankfully, he's a rational guy, an INTJ, I think. So I'm hoping God will help this work out. Could use some prayer, by the way. But anyway, Neo said he could do a sort of trial run with me and Braden, and we hung out afterward, and it was good. I then proceeded to work for an hour before dying and leaving work early because I felt like trash, and then I studied for the SAT in my contaminated state. All in all, a very enjoyable experience, clearly. Oh, and I talked with 2 Kiwis about my moderate skepticism and views on presuppositionalism. That was actually quite enjoyable. The day after that, I felt trash and worked on my history paper of death. Yep, it's official. That's its name now. But bonus, I got a new desk and a whiteboard. I scheduled my life proportionally to a calendar, and it looks like this, which you can't see. And remember, that's potential free time, not like actual free time. That doesn't count any homework, family stuff, or other, one-time scheduled activities. So yeah, life is crazy, but also really good. I'm also really thankful for where God has me right now. So I'm going to try and do the best I can with it. That night I got to catch up with, I got to watch Captain Marvel with Mom and Ben. So that was cool. Not the best Marvel movie I've seen, but definitely not the worst. The next day I did more work on the aforementioned history paper of death. Got to play D&D with Braden, and one member of our party almost got us killed. Who thinks that lightning barrels full of alcohol in a cave is a good idea? And then we did our Bible study and played some Smash Bros. The next day, I was at school again. I played handball in the gym and did work, responded to emails, and wrote a paper, I think. More school the next day. I had a workout of pain, but as a black man once said, nope, that's not correct. As a man in black once said, life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something. I found out this person that goes to our youth group, who I thought was like 13, is actually 19. Seriously, my mind is blown. But in hindsight, that totally makes sense. We would get in debates, and I'd be taken aback by some of the insightful things she said. At the time, I was like, man, this is a really smart 13-year-old. But I guess not. I then did more homework, went to Ratio Christie, where I got to savor the moment when Noah admitted he was wrong. Basks in the memory. That was a good moment. And then we had a good conversation where valid and significant rebuttals to the ontological problem even were formed. At least, a significant rebuttal as it presently stands. The other thing that happened that night was I left my phone at CSU, and this super nice guy, Jack, opened the whole building back up just so I could get it for me. I wrote a short story about the whole experience, so you can read it if you want to, but it was really kind of him. The day after that, I took a Strengths Finders test, sponsored by school, and for those of you who know what that is, I got the following top 5 strengths in order. Learner, Achiever, Relator, Focus, Commander. So, for those of you that care, you can look up what those mean. And if you've taken the test, let me know. What are your top 5? Then I did more work, went to youth group, and we played this cool in-the-air Foursquare game. I can't really describe it, but maybe I'll get a picture sometimes and show you. And it was really fun. The next day, let's see, I did school and more work on the history paper of death. The day after that, I finally got my transcripts from my CLEPS, which I did ages ago, and got that off my list. Now, the plan is to stay at CEC for the next 2 years, so yeah, it looks like I'm not going to graduate high school anytime until I'm like 20. But, well, I mean, not really but I'll be older than everyone else. Then I hung out with Braden, played some Smash Bros, and talked about God. The next day was really nice. Ben and Mom bricked down a restaurant. Went down to a restaurant called the Silver Girl at around 11. I slept in for just a bit. And there Ben did a momentous thing. He broke his sugar fast. This is the most important part, by the way. The cinnamon rolls of Silver Girl. And they have really good cinnamon rolls. So Ben's been like debating over this momentous act of breaking a fast that's a fast from processed sugar, said he's had it for over a year. And why, you ask, would he fast from sugar? Get this, there's literally no reason. He seriously just wanted to see if he could do it, which apparently the answer is yes. Oh, and I also think he's been pondering the meaning of life. The best he's got so far is 42, though. After we biked home, I finished the history paper of death. Yes. There's actually more than one part, though. So, and then we watched a super cheesy movie and mocked it the whole time, which is sometimes more fun than actually watching an interesting movie. Oh, and I got this cool quote idea for a shirt. I wait to tell you, though, when I've actually got printed. The next day it was snowing, and on my way to church, there was this guy hobbling on the side of the road. So after seeing I was early and a brief moment of compassion, I gave him a ride as far as church. Apparently, he wrecked his bike and hurt his leg, and seemed like he was a pretty nice guy, though. So yeah, I picked up my first hitchhiker, and then it literally cost me nothing, and it was extremely easy to do. I should be rewarded greatly for my vast amounts of self-sacrifice. I then proceeded to sit through church and talk some afterwards, and then I played the best D&D session yet, and got a pet wolf named Henry. I actually had such a good time that day that my cheeks hurt from smiling so much. We then had Bible study with weird supernatural stories, which was cool. I then played some games with Neo that night, and Dad took me out and taught me how to drive on snow. Once you get the hang of it, it's actually really fun. I may or may not have learned how to do backward donuts. My car has front-wheel drive. So yeah, it was great. Moving on, I got permission to teach the history class about St. Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways, because I know quite a bit about him at this point in time. But gosh, did I butcher that opportunity. Like, I even confused myself. The problem is, I'm scared of speaking in front of large judgmental groups of people, so I totally lost my ability to teach. Yeah, not a memory I wish to relive. Other than that, though, I watched a movie with Ben, and we talked to a certain ENTJ who wished to reject my moderate skepticism on the, at the very least, questionable grounds that I was, like, wrong. And I was like, oh, good talk. The next day, it was really snowy, and unfortunately, Ratchet Christie was canceled, so instead I started reading this book about a guy named Edward Phaser and Aquinas, which has been really good so far. Then, in a perfectly rational manner, when the next day was perfectly fine and no snow fell whatsoever, we then had a snow day. Face palms. I don't know what people's logic is. But hey, I'm not one to more a snow day, no matter how poorly contrived. I then used the time to study for my upcoming SAT, went to work, and that evening I went to a Halloween party at the church dressed up as the best character ever. The only problem is, if you asked him, "Who are you?" all he would say is no one of consequence. Here's a picture to give you a hint. All in all, it was a pretty good time. At that point, I officially started No Shave November, which I've been utterly losing, by the way. The next day was school. I worked out with Caleb and was outdone again. And then I brought Ben home during my lunch because Dad couldn't pick him up, and I studied for the SAT some more. The day after that, I went to school and learned how to play Magic with the Nerd Table. I have a deck from way back when I was like a freshman, so I used that, and I basically got utterly destroyed. I then proceeded to super study for the SAT, which was tomorrow. The next day, I woke up early, and I took a 4-hour test. But let's be honest, I liked it more than New Zealand end of year exams because, you know, they gave you a break every hour, which was nice. I think I did pretty well, but we'll see. And my friend Josiah was there, so that was cool. After that, my brain was just like, no more thinking. So I decided to build some Legos, and I got halfway done before the most boss spaceship I've ever made came into existence. I'll show you in a bit. In the meantime, Ben was playing with the dog, and it was funny. Yeah, after like 5 hours, I got to the back-aching stage of building Lego, and so I had to, stop. And I went to the Myers house. Well, I should maybe say I got to go to the Myers house, but I'll admit it was sad to leave my creation. And I will show you what I got done. Granted, that doesn't seem very impressive if you saw the picture, but it took me like 5 hours, so you'll see why it's awesome in a sec. Anyway, on the way there, Ben did this. Don't ask me why. You can see the picture. And yeah, we went to the Myers house for dinner. It was pretty good. It was like the whole time playing poker. Oh, I did play Ben in a game of chess, and I lost, so let's not dwell on that part. We played with real money, only $2, and I did horrible. The point is, though, it was a satisfactory time, and I just lost a little too much for comfort. But when I got home, I spent the remaining hours of my sleep-deprived brain to make this boss spaceship, which looks really cool. And it starts looking like this. But when you turn the key back, attached to the back turbine, the turbines spin really fast. Plus, it can transform into battle mode like this. And there's these 2 guns that pop out, and the turbines still work. That's why my first part was so hard and it took like 5 hours. Anyway, I'm pretty darn happy with it, and it's pretty great. The next day, I proceeded to show off some spaceships to the Myers at church, and I showed it off at D&D. And at D&D, Henry died, so honestly not that sad. We're hoping the replacement character will be a fairy, so that's going to be interesting. We then did typical Bible study, in which Neo got into debate with me, and I totally won. And then we played Halo, and ate Walmart pizza, which was seasoned, and actually tasted really good. Maybe there's some point to learning how to cook after all. The next day of school was uneventful. I did work, also uneventful. And then that night, I hung out with Joe, and that was great. We ate at Panda Express, which was meh best, but we talked about philosophy for a long time, so that was good. I also started watching some Lutheran satire videos, which are honestly great. You have to look those up. The one on Dawkins, woo! That's pretty good. The day after that, I had school again. I drove Ben home again. I started him reading my first novella, because he got through all my short stories. And then I took Josiah out to Cane's, and we had a great talk. The thing I love about talking with him is he's not just like me teaching him. We both learned something. I'm still amazed he's only 16. But yeah, really good conversations there. And then likewise, Horatio Christie. I presented this argument against free will based off of Aristotelian metaphysics I came up with. And since Alan was a Thomist, he had to accept the Aristotelian metaphysics part and had a hard time. We got sort of on a side trail about how the will works. I proposed a mechanism that he couldn't rebut at the moment, but I'm sure he'll come up with something next Tuesday. And I had a temporary victory. Here's the picture of the whiteboard fight. The next day was more school. I played ultimate football in the gym, which is just two-hand touch American football indoors, and that was fun. The rest of the day was normal, working youth group and all that. Oh, I did catch up with a guy from New Zealand that night, so that was cool. The next day I had more school and got to hang out with Braden afterward. We tried to talk philosophy while playing video games. That didn't work so well. So we ended up just stop playing and talking, and that was really good. The only thing is I think I'm being a little too tolerant. I mean, it's a fine balance. I need to figure out where that is. Because I don't just want to, like, scare him away from talking with me. But I also don't really agree with his morals either. So you could just pray for me for that. That would be great. The next day was more school. I played some more Magic with the table. I did some homework and walked downtown with the fam. Here's a picture of that. Mom and Dad got us donuts. That was worth it. No, actually, it was nice just hanging out with everyone, even if donuts hadn't happened. I've just been so busy, I haven't really seen them much of late. So yeah, this morning I started working on this email, and then I hung out with Caleb about midday, and that was great. We saw a movie, which is pretty good. And yep, I've been typing ever since. Ha! Take that, life update email. You have been conquered! Also, here's two pictures that don't really matter much. Here's how Ben looks. You can see why he wears a beanie. Alright guys, thank you for enjoying to the end, and if you find time to flick me an update on how life is going for you, I will read it. Thank you for all reading, and I'll talk to you all later.